I'll be starting at the top here, load tool, and I will be loading from the Z tools folder. The file format is the ZTL, and that is the only file format for the open or load tools. This is a file format that ZBrush reads, and only ZBrush can read it. No other application can read this. So if we load, let's say, the demo head, this is a default head that comes with ZBrush. This is a modified version, so I can show you something here. And we'll load it. This ZTL file format stores information when it's saved and loaded. I'll give you a brief overview of what it stores when it's saved and loaded. Is if we go into subtools, you can see that this head had subtools, and it automatically loaded the subtools. If we go to geometry, it stored and saved all of the subdivision levels. If we look at the head, we can see that it saved the texture. So basically, if this head was made right now and I went over to save as, only can save as a ZTL, and it's going to save all that information. Notice this is a 3D tool here. In other words, I'm going to clear the canvas, Control N, and when I drag out, and as soon as I let go of the mouse button, I'm going to select edit mode. This will let me rotate it in all axes. This is a 3D tool. We can also save 2.5D tools. Let's undo edit here, clear the canvas, Control N. 2.5D tools are these tools down here. Example, I will select the alpha brush right here, and by default in this modifier the set color is off, and for this little example I will just turn it on and see if this will store this information. So we'll come up here and press save as. This is a 2.5D tool, and we'll call this alpha brush test. Now note that I am saving this in the Z tools folder, so we're going to save it here. We'll just turn this back off for this little experiment and switch to any kind of random tool. And Lightbox is another way of loading tools. We'll select here and we'll go to the tools, and there's our alpha brush, and there's our head right here. So if I double click this, we'll close Lightbox. We'll open this up. As you can see, it stored this information where this is on, and if we select to the original one, you can see that I turned that off. Now if I want to remove this, what I could do is load this, come over here and click it. Press the delete key. Once it's deleted, we'll cancel this, and it's no longer in Lightbox. Not be going over Lightbox in this tutorial. This is just one way that we can load tools and save tools. Another way is if I select this big icon and bring my cursor to the bottom, we have load tools, save tools, and an import. And when I bring my cursor over here, you'll notice these buttons up here also get active. Notice the export is grayed out until I select another tool. We'll select the star here. So when I open this up, I want you to keep an eye on the buttons up here. And when I hover over the load tools, and the save tool, and an import and export, in the upper right, you can see them highlight. We have the import. We'll go ahead and go to a folder where we're going to import some stuff here. This comes from another, I got this OBJ. This comes from another package, 3D package. There's different file types right here. Common one I use is OBJ. This is a way that you can import and export 3D file formats from one application to another. Press open, and we'll bring it out like this, and select edit mode. Hold the right click down and the control key and right click to scale it. And the next step is we can export this, which would be the same way as or the vice versa way of import, and we can export this. Now when we export this and import this OBJ, it's not like ZTLs. It does not store any kind of subtools, and as example, it will not bring in any kind of subdivision level. So this is your choice of how you want to save and load tools. The ZTL is the most common way, and there's other ways, but stores a lot of information, and I use it quite a bit. With this tool selected, as you can see down here, we have an export option. Anytime that I make an adjustment down here and I export it, it will apply to this tool of anything that I change down here. If I export all triangles, it will try converting any quads into triangles as an example. If I want to import something, I would just select, let's say, the polymesh star tool, which is most common to use when you import something. It's not a necessity that you use this. Then you can press import. If you come down here to the import option, you can do all your settings, and as soon as it imports, any adjustments you do down here will affect it when it imports. So example, if I have this tri to quads, and if I have a mesh that I'm bringing in that has triangles to it and import it, it'll try converting it to quads. It'll try doing the best it can do. It'll import it, or I can import it from here, or I can import it from here. By default, all import OBJs are polymesh 3D, and it's not necessary to make it a polymesh 3D, but I prefer to. When I bring it in, it seems to make things work a lot better. As you can notice, the name here, it says FMZ. Once I make it a polymesh 3D, the name will change to PM3D underscore FMZ. PM stands for polymesh 3D. Let's go to the demo head here, and we'll spin this around and directly towards me here. And I'll be going over the GoZ just a little bit. This is a plugin for exporting and importing to other applications really quick. And these buttons all the way across are pretty much associated. We can export all the subtools. That means, and when I transfer it over to this other application, it'll try transferring all the subtools. We have an option to export just the visible. If something is hidden with an eye, it will try exporting just the visible, so it's not going to export the eye. And we have this R icon, and we have one down here. Don't get this one confused with this one. They are not the same. And when I select this, it's giving me an option. It's telling me, show me which one is my current application is going to try going to, a Sculptress, or I can change it. I'll cancel that. So as an example, let's close this up, and I will press the GoZ and give it a second. Then it'll bring it into this application right here. Once I make some changes here, I'll come over and select the GoZ, and we'll get the update here as the new changes. See the texture removed. That's not what I'm going to go over. See, I can Control Z and you can still get that back. We have the clone option. All this does is make a copy of what I want clone. If I want to clone just the head, as you can see, I can just press clone. If I want to clone all the subtools, we also have clone all subtools. This just makes a copy. Example, if I want to clone just the head, I will clone it. As you can see, I still have a subtool here. The reason why you don't see a head is because the tool did not change. It's usually at the end of the list. So we select here. Now we have just the head that I cloned. select back here. As you notice, that clone one was the last one on the list. A quick way to do that is I like moving this little slider here, and when I move it all the way to the right, since the last thing I cloned was just the head, I can pick up that tool really quick. In other words, I can switch tools to anything I want, and if I want to get really back to the head really quick, I would just move this to the right. When I import something like an OBJ, this number does increase. We have make polymesh 3D, and these are for basically 3D primitives. Most of these are 3D primitives. When you start the application up, you'll see them right here. Anything I add new is not a 3D primitive, like the head and some of this imported stuff. Example is this ring here. Press F on the keyboard to frame that back. A good way to tell if this is a 3D primitive, normally you can't edit. So if I drag down here, I'm going to get a pop-up, and it's going to tell me to enable sculpturing. Please convert the 3D primitive to a polymesh 3D. Another way to tell if it's a 3D primitive, most all these have what we call this initialize down here. We'll turn on a polyframe. Some of these primitives will have different settings. Some will have more, some will have less, but most of them will have what we call this S divide and H divide. What this means is you can adjust the way that the edges increase or decrease in different directions. And we'll do a little bit of twisting right here. Then when I'm happy, I'm going to make it a polymesh 3D, and when I do, this initialize palette here will no longer be there. Then now I'm able to sculpture on this right here and ready to go. Another thing is this is getting quite full here, and if we open this up, it's getting quite full. We can clean this up using this R icon. So this is your choice of what you want to clean up. It might clean up a little bit more than you want to, but just something to experiment with. So when I press the R icon, it cleans up the palette and cleans up this mess in here. Alright, we're going to go to the next step here. We got this quick pick. We got the demo head up here in the quick pick. Most times when we select something, it'll be up here in the quick pick. So if I select the ring 3D and we open it up, it's in the quick pick right here. Okay. A lot of times when we get a lot of stuff going on in here and we start cloning and importing meshes, things start getting a little cluttery. What the quick pick does is it puts it up here because these might be the most common tools that you use, and they're real easy to see and access. Example, let's say I like to use the smudge brush. Alright, we'll skip this note here. It's trying to drop the tool because we're in edit mode here, so it's going to get switched over. And if we look, it's up in the quick pick. And let's say I like to use the bump brush also. Well, if you look up here, we have the bump brush and the smudge brush, and if we look at the way it's laid out, all the 2.5Ds are stuck to the left and all the 3D meshes are to the right. If we want to, this will get kind of full after a while. There's probably a maximum on here that you can only do so many quick picks. To reset it, we'll press the R icon, then you can see it cleaned it up. So if I was to select the demo head, now it will be back in the quick pick. Now you notice the bump brush stayed in there, but if I reset it again, the bump brush will be removed. The other ones stay in here by default. Alright, let's go into the next step here. Let's clear the canvas. Control N. and we're gonna go down to 3D meshes. Alright, most of these are 3D meshes or can be converted into a 3D mesh, kind of like the Z-sphere here. It actually doesn't start off as a 3D mesh. We'll get to that in just a little bit. We got the sphere 3D. This was kind of the old method to sculpture heads. If you hover your cursor over an icon and hold the control key down, it gives you some information, and it's kind of basically telling you, this sphere was kind of a starter sphere that's good for starting points to make, let's say, heads. Alright. The problem with this sphere is if we turn on the polyframes here, we got a bunch of points that are all gathered here. Alright, and if we turn it around, we got them all right here. Well, we call these poles, and it's not good to sculpture over something like this because it will create a artifact. And if I try editing this, this is also a 3D primitive, and I need to convert it to a Polymesh 3D. So we'll switch this, and if we start doing something right here, let's turn off the polyframes. It gives a little bit of artifact. So this is probably not something you want to start off with. You can turn it down like this, press the X for the cemetery, then you would do your sculpturing like this. I'm in Z mode here, and the Z sub, well, push in. Alright, let's control Z this. Now they do have a starter sphere. If you come into the light box here, and we'll go over and let's go into the Z projects here, and we got this default sphere here. We'll press no. Alright, this sphere here, it's a little different. We look here, it does not have the poles on the top and the bottom. I'll turn off the floor here so we can just see the mesh. This sphere here is basically from a cube. We'll go over, I'll just show you this real quick. If we lower the subdivision down here, alright, then we'll delete the higher, and we're going to come down here and reconstruct subdivision. Alright, this works on most meshes but not all. And we'll click it again, and click it again, and click it again. This is basically what it started from, is a cube. Alright, and every time it was subdivided with smooth on, you get rounder and rounder and rounder. Alright, now if we go over and we select this cube, this cube's good to sculpture in a way it's not, and it's the way we're having the same problem again with all these points coming up here. I like to have my stuff kind of uniform, having these polygons nice and even and evenly spaced apart. Alright, got it kind of irregular here. What we can do is we can go back to that one sphere here, so we'll just come back here, and at this point in time we're just going to go ahead and delete the high here, and we need to turn the smoothing off because we don't want it to get real rounded when we divide it. So I'll click here. You can kind of see in the video if you go full screen, we're starting to get some edges here, and we'll click here, and we're going to delete the low. Then now we have all evenly polygons all the way around the cube. But then again, I'll switch back to the sphere here, and if we go open up a light box, we also have a default cube that we can go here, so we don't have to do all that extra little steps. Alright, and we're going to clear the canvas. Okay, I had paused the video for a second and restarted ZBrush, so if you see any new changes, that's the reason why. Our next step, we're going to be going over the 3D meshes. These are all 3D primitives, okay? This is what you'll see on startup. But before I get started on this, I'm going to be doing a little brief going over a few things before I even get started on this. When I get to this next step here, I'm not going to get into full detail, but I'm going to show you some examples, and I'll get into a little bit more detail later in another video. So let's go ahead and select the ring right here, and when we drag it out, alright, this is actually 2.5D until we select edit mode. Alright, this is the edit mode right here. It says edit object, then the letter T. We can select here to go into edit mode or out of edit mode, or we can press T and you can see the red. You know when you're in edit mode when your cursor turns red, or we press T again, now it's white or kind of grayish. So we'll press T again to go in edit mode. Now once you're in edit mode, you can do things with it. Alright, long as my cursor is not touching the mesh and I'm off the mesh here, I can rotate it around. And I can rotate it this way. Alright, if I want to snap in a direct axis, I can start turning it. When I get close, I'll just hold the shift key and it'll snap. Bring it back a little bit, shift key and snap, shift key and snap. If I want to move it, I'll hold the Alt key and I can move it like this. Alright, now if I want to scale it, I'll basically do the same thing as I'm going to move it. Hold the Alt key, I'll move it just a little bit, then let off the Alt key, and we can kind of scale it like this. Alright, now like I said, if we're going to clear the canvas with it in edit mode, doesn't work. You need to have edit mode off, then it will clear right there. Anything in edit mode's on does not get removed. The common mistake most new people do is when they bring out their mesh out here, right, the first thing you need to do is go in edit mode, and what they will do is try spinning it right away without going in edit mode, and what happens is they end up drawing out another mesh without going into edit mode. So as soon as you bring it out, jump into edit mode, then you can rotate it this way. Now like I said, if it's active and I try clearing the canvas, anything that's active does not get cleared. But we got two of these over here that are not in edit mode, so they will be removed. Control N, and the one that's active will stay. So we'll bring this up here. Alright, now this is a 3D primitive, so if I uncheck here and go to the move mode, we can move this. Alright, we got like 4 of these blank areas inside this gyro. We can bring our cursor in there and move it. Alright, let me scale this up. We can scale it too, scale it uniformly, and we'll drag in that area right there. Now if I go back, let's go back into move mode real quick. If I try moving and grabbing the center of the circle, nothing will work there, so you gotta kind of be in the blank area right here. I just want to scale that up so you can see it. Let's get back to scale here. Like I said, if you get in any of these blank areas right here inside the gyro, you can scale it uniformly. And if we come over here on the line and we scale it this way, and you can see right here and here, and we can also rotate it. We need it to be on the outside of the edge here, and we can rotate it this way. Alright, we are in 2.5D mode, and we can only move things in a certain axis. Alright, we can't rotate this three-dimensional. Okay, we're restricted until we come back here and go into edit mode, then we can rotate it around all axes. Alright, now take note, this is a still a 3D primitive. If I try editing on it, I get this little pop-up telling me this is a 3D primitive and it needs to be converted to a Polymesh 3D. Alright. I'm going to do a little example here because this is still a 3D primitive. If I in edit mode and go to move mode, alright, notice there's no changes, alright, because I want you to see this in the next step. So let's go back here and we'll do it again. No changes in my cursor. So this time we're going to come over here and we're going to convert this to a Polymesh 3D. Now right now it says ring 3D, and when I switch it to Polymesh 3D, make Polymesh 3D, alright, the name has changed and the tool automatically switched. It now says PM3D. Alright, that stands for Polymesh 3D. Now when I come back here and select move, we got this action line now. Alright, and I'm going to click and drag here, and like I said, not going to get in full detail on this part here. Now we are in move mode. I'm going to select this little circle right here in the middle, and we're going to move it. You can scale it, alright, and you can rotate it. We'll get into a little bit more of this later on. Alright, let's clear the canvas here. Now, even though that these are 3D objects, there's certain things that you can kind of do with these, which is kind of fun. Example, when you select one of these 3D, by default you'll see most of these are set to drag ret, and what it's doing is dragging out, and that's your type of stroke. Now if I switch the stroke, let's say to freehand, let's clear the canvas, and you can see we get something like that, which is kind of cool. Let's go ahead and switch that back to drag rect right here, and I'll switch ring. Now when I bring this out, this is 2.5D. Alright, this means it has depth, and what I mean by that is if I switch a tool here and I go into the bump brush, alright, just imagine this ring is laying on the ground, and it does have depth. To prove it has depth, alright, most 3D programs when you draw, they don't have depth. This is 2.5D, means it has depth. So if I was to draw on the ground and come up to the object to show it's got depth, it'll climb right over the top of it and right back down on the ground. You can see the depth right there. Another thing is, a little tip, every time that you select something, alright, in ZBrush, alright, keep an eye out on the whole interface while you're selecting something, because some things will change, alright, and some things won't. Alright, as an example, I selected the ring. You can see all these are active, and it's saying, hey, these stroke types are associated if I want to change it with this ring. Okay, and we can select different ones and see what's active and what's not active. Alright, if I just let's say I selected something off the wall, alright, it got dimmed out, and I can't even select it with this tool. We'll go over this tool in a little bit. It's saying, hey, this stroke type has nothing to do with this tool, you can't use it. Alright, now when I switch back over the ring, alright, go to edit mode, even though that the texture's not on or the alpha's not on, does not mean it can't be associated with it. One way or another, you can activate it in a different way, alright, on certain tools. Okay, we're going to be going over the 3D meshes. We're going to go over some of the primitive settings. I'll be going over a few of these, not every one. I'll go over some of the most important ones, because once I apply something and show you in one 3D mesh, it'll pretty much be the same for the next one. So let's go ahead and get started this, and we'll start with the Sphere 3D, and we'll bring this out, and we'll go ahead and turn on the floor right here, And if we go down to Initialize here, now the 3D primitives only have the settings down here, okay? The Polymesh 3 don't. And it says for the X size, alright? It's going to try moving this in the X axis, alright? You can hold the control key down to read a little bit more about it. And if you're unfamiliar which one is the X axis, well, most people, they just move a button and see what it does, alright? Or a slider and see what it does. But anyway, if you look real close in the video, we got this little indicator at the bottom. It's got this pinkish red line, that's the X, and this little light blue one, that's the Z. That's front to back. And if we go to the Y, that's usually top to bottom. Alright, so once again, the red one is left to right, that's the X axis. The blue one is the Z, that's front to back, and the Y is top to bottom. Alright, now we got that out of the way. Instead of me control Zing that, I will just go ahead and switch back over here. And now this one has an extra one that's called coverage. If I select it, you can see how that works there. These are just kind of fun to tinker with. Now some of these are not going to have all the settings that you see here, or they might have less, or they might have more, but most of them will have this, what you call H divide. It's going to turn on polyframes. It's going to add or remove all the horizontal subdivision lines. So if I move it to the left, it'll start removing some till it gets real low. And then we got the V divide for the vertical. Okay, then you have the lines going the other way. You can remove or add them this way. I'll move them down a little bit, then a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, so you can kind of see. Be very careful not to crank this up real high, because you'll end up with a lot of subdivision. And if we look at the poly count right here, it's 380, and if we start cranking this up quite a bit, it can jump up really quick. This one's 66,126. So be very careful about that. Alright, we'll go ahead and instead of undo, we'll just select this one again. And we also got this option right here. It's under the geometry. Alright, this does not have a lot of settings for the primitives. Alright, if I was to make this a Polymesh 3D, you'll see that we got a lot more settings. Alright, but we're going to stick into the 3D primitive settings for right now, and we'll just tip this up here, and we got this one that's called Optimize. Alright, this reduces the polygons. If I move it here, well, actually before I move it, I'll just show you. This one's got 8,192, and I'll optimize it 100, and 2,048. Optimize it again, and I'll keep optimizing it for a few times, and it'll eventually get pretty low. Another thing is, when I start getting real low, you'll see that this icon up here does not kind of resemble the 3D mesh here. The reason why is this, because this icon is displaying it is in smooth mode, and this icon is not. Not icon, but the 3D mesh. So if we used to go to the transform here, this is the quick edit right here. Alright, this will show you which way it's going to be displayed, smooth or not smooth. So if I select it, now you can see both these kind of resemble each other. Alright, now it's highly recommended to have the quick edit on, and we'll go over this in a later video tutorial. I'll just switch over to this one here, and not going to get in a whole lot of detail because we already went over this. And there's certain ones that you can kind of do certain things with. It's basically just messing with them. Like this one here, you can kind of make maybe a screw. Alright, it's really nifty. Yeah, make a screw there. and we're going to go and we're going to start skipping a few, and we're going to go to some of the important ones. Now, before I go there, you can see got a lot of some of the same settings as the H divide and the V divide here, and this one has twist to this one here. Let's go into the sweep right here, sweep profile. Okay, now let's close this one up here. This one's got a graph to it. All right. Now this graph here, it kind of is it is the profile shape of what we have here in front of us. So I'm going to zoom this up, and this graph actually indicates and represents half of that. So in other words, I'll show you in a second. I'll move this one here. You can see I'm moving the top, but it's moving the bottom down here, so we'll just switch this around here and lock it in. And what I mean about showing half is you can kind of visualize it. I'll move it over to the screen like this, and you can kind of see how they're both resemble each other, because that's how it works. So if I was to bring this one out the bottom, you can see that one move out here, and we'll bring this one out a little bit here. We can add points and click right here, and we can drag it in. We can add another point up here, click and drag it out. Now these are kind of smooth in and smooth out. Alright, these are pretty smooth points I'm adding. If I want to sharpen them up, I would just go ahead and select the one right here. See, if I click it once, it zooms in. I'm going to grab this circle and I'm going to scale it in, and it's going to start making these making it more straight in and straight out and less curvature, as you can see there. Alright, now if I want to move a point, I would just select it and drag it off the graph and let go. Alright, we got this focal shift, pretty self-explanatory. You could move it to the left and you can see it kind of bring everything down. What's good about this, it will not mess with the start and end. And we got the offset, and you can kind of see how that works. Like I said, you can hold the control key over here and you can read a little bit more about it. And I'll just give you a little bit in depth here. Now I got the noise here. Alright, the noise, well, you'll see here in a second. I'll add a little bit of noise to it, just a little bit. Alright, and I'll bring this back over here. And what this noise does is, you can see it's kind of bringing the graph in and out, in and out, in and out. It's got a little bit more here in the graph than you can see here. Another thing, it does not mess with the points that you already got. And another thing, if this graph's got a lot of noise and you don't see a lot here, is because you don't have enough geometry. Alright, and it might be in the either the H divide or the V divide. So you might want to increase that, and then you'll get a lot more noise like you do right here using the graph. Alright, you can reset it, and you can see the graph here, and I will do some adjustments here. We'll bring this one right here. Now, like I said, it's representing half of it right here. I'll go ahead and do a little experiment with the straight in, straight out. Alright, I'll add one here, click here, and click down here. Now see how smooth it is right here? So we're going to go ahead and just select this till it turns orange. We're going to bring it in. We're going to select this one. You can see over here it's starting to get real sharp, not rounded. we got the undos and we got the redos. Easy to understand. We got the copy. Alright, we can copy this curve and bring it to another curve palette and paste it. It doesn't have to be just in this one here. Another thing is, if you copy here and for some reason you press reset, you're like, oops, I messed up, just paste it back here. You can paste it in anything that's got a curve option. So I could bring this over here and I could just paste it over here if I wanted to. But this is basically, I'm going to be pasting it maybe in another option over here that might have another curve. Okay, so let's see what we got here next. Basically these got the X and the Y and then the Z, but this one here, it's got a profile for the thickness. Alright, you will need to increase the thickness right here. Alright, and if you look at this graph here, this is going to show you, if I move it in, you can see it's moving the top of the thickness right here. It's just doing the top, and I can widen it here. Now, since both of these are in a straight line, it should have pretty much the same thickness. This one here is for the bottom. And when you are happy with what you have here, we're going to convert this into a polymesh 3D. So press make polymesh 3D, then we're ready to sculpture this. Okay, I paused the video for a second, but we're going into the next step here, and we're going to select this gear here. This one also has a graph to it. If we go down to the interlies here, we also have a profile on this one, and since we copied the one from the sweep, we can paste this one here. This one has a lot more settings. We got the coverage here. Alright, I'm not going to go over every one of these sliders. I already got you up and running through some of the basic that you'll see on a lot of these sliders, like the H divide and the V divide, and these are typical of most of them, and the rest of them are a little bit different. If you don't understand them, pretty much it's simple. All you got to do is move a slider and just take a look at it and really see what it does. That's the best way to understand it, because sometimes if I have to explain through every one of these, it might not sink in. So I just got you up and running, so we'll leave it at that. Each one of these tools here, they have a number next to the slider. If you can look to the left of my cursor, this is number 60. If I move it all the way to the right, number 62 is the highest tool in the tool 3D meshes here. So anytime that you add something, it adds a number. Example, let's take this one here. Alright, remember 62 is our highest. We select something different, and once I import something or make a polymesh 3, it's going to add to that number. So 62 is the highest. I'll click it. Now 63 is the highest. You can, when you move the slider, the numbers will update, and you can actually double click in here, or not double click, you can just click in here and type in a number and press enter. I put in 63, and you can see it brought back the highest one. I kind of like my last tool is usually the most common tool I use, and if for some reason I switch to a different tool that I'm just kind of messing with and I want to get back to my original one, and the list gets pretty long and kind of I'm getting duplicates of everything and I want to get back to that original one, instead of me selecting here, I'll just come up here and just move the slider all the way to the right, and boom, I'll get back to this one I kind of like messing with. Okay, I paused the video again, and I want to go over some brief things here that I might have went over a little bit too fast, but I'll explain one more time here, just a little bit. When we select and click, you can see it added a point. If I click the point again, it zooms it in. If I click the point again, it zooms it out. If I want to delete and remove the point, I would just grab it and just drag it up or somewhere off the graph. Then it will be removed. It's no longer there. If I want to make a hard edge, instead of clicking it and scaling it down with an orange circle, what we can do is, let's go ahead and drag this off right now, is when we add a point here and we want to make it a hard point right here, as you can see it's kind of soft, we'll grab that point, we'll drag it off the graph and bring it back on the graph. Now it's starting to get a little harder. Alright, so if we do the same one with this one here, just grab this, drag it off the graph and bring it back on the graph. Now we are starting to get some harder shapes. Okay, let's go into the next step. I know I said I wasn't going to go over all these tools, but I'm going to kind of speed things up, so you can just sit back and kind of don't really have to pay attention. I'll just kind of go over a few things on still in the same area, so we'll select here and kind of go over a few things and just kind of mess around, and you get a lot of cool results when you find something that's a little different than the rest of them. Like this one's got the inner right here. Okay, it looks like we got some thickness and we can taper that. That's pretty cool. And then we got the cone here, and we also have taper and inner this one right here. Almost got the same kind of effect. And we skipped the sphere, I think. And a lot of times you get some really cool effects when you turn down the H divide. Turn the polyframes down. And we'll have to kick it down, and you can kind of get some cool stuff like that. Alright, let's jump back over here to the ring here. And you can kind of make like horns with this. You can bring this up, and there's another one here. Let's see what we got. The coverage and the scale factor. Yeah, we can make some horns like this, and we can kind of twist it. Now you probably won't see no twisting until you lower one of the divisions down a little bit, and it really brings it out a lot. Okay, and we got the we already went to sweep, the Turgeon here 3D. What this is kind of designed for is for landscaping. Okay, if you want to make some kind of hills, and what you do is you would scale this way out like this, and you can make some bumps and whatever you decide that you want to do. That's pretty cool for landscaping. And we'll just jump down here to this Spyro. We're going to skip the arrow, and we'll just come down here, and we'll bring this down here. And you can do all kinds of stuff. And like I said, a lot of times when you set the H divide down, then you can start to get kind of different effects. You can make like a twisted little horn or something like that, which is kind of cool. And pretty much I went over quite a bit of it, so I think you kind of get the hint. This is, you know, you can kind of do some really cool stuff. Alright, now see, it's got these this interlaced down here, and these are made for the primitives. Okay, let's select right here. It knows how to calculate this geometry, so it's not going to be messed up. So in other words, if I move my H divide or my V divide, it's going to try and making these so they don't overlap or crisscross or make bad geometry. Even if I make some points here and I try dragging this one up underneath here, it's going to make good geometry. It's not going to overlap. So if I bring this one down here, it's always going to try making the best geometry it can. This here is the Polymesh 3D star tool. This main use is for bringing in different file formats from different packages. If we look down here, we got options for this tool is import and export. Alright, now some tools have this option and some tools don't. Alright, you can see this one has just the export. So we're going to be using this one. It has the import and export. And it's somewhat similar to the Make Polymesh 3D. But if we press import, we're going to bring in this tri-polyball. This is all triangles. And we're going to edit mode and turn on the polyframes. If you go full screen, you'll be able to see if this ball's all triangles. If I wish to switch this over to this option here, it says tries to quads. It's going to try its best to import and convert any triangles to quads. Alright, it's going to do its best. It might not be perfect. You can select this import here or this import here. We'll bring that same one in here, and you can see there. Now I've got some it'll look like some holes here, and I believe that's a little bit of a screen display problem right there. It's just kind of illusion. Alright, now we got this one here says merge point. When you import it, it's going to merge some points that if you hold your control key over it, it'll give you more information about the points. It will points which if they're overlapping. I don't have anything set up to show you this, and we got this add here. This is like it'll merge another mesh on top of this. I'm not going to be able to show you in this one because I'm using zbrush1313. This is pretty new, and I'm having a slight problem, so I'm not going to be able to show you. So, and really, this area here is probably one of the less areas that you will be using. And you got your export options here, and it's basically vice versa of import. You just export it, and if I want to export all quads, I would have the quads. It's on by default. If I want to export the triangles, I'll just show you an example. Let's select one here, and we go down here, and we'll switch this to tries. And when I export this, alright, this is the sphere 3D, and we'll save this. Alright, now when I import this, let's select the star here. The star does not have to actually be on the screen here, on the canvas. And we'll just go ahead and import. And remember, this one was all quads, but on the export we had it set to tries. So when we bring this in, and we still got the polyframe on, this converts all the quads into triangles, which they are. Alright. Like I said, this Polymesh 3D, the star one here, is basically designed for bringing in other meshes. Now, you don't really have to have this selected to bring in the mesh. I could select something different. It's going to ask me to drop that there, Control N, and I can import without going through the star. And we'll load this up. And typically you don't. I do know that I always still make my import OBJs as a Polymesh 3D, and you can see it says the tool name right there, Sphere 3D, make Polymesh 3D. Now it says PM Sphere 3D. The reason why I do this is because it seems to work better. I don't have any complications when I am working on this mesh of maybe crashing or something. I don't know the math behind this, if it helps or if it's just me, but when things start working in one way, I kind of have routine to always do the same thing. So when I bring it in, I always make it a Polymesh 3D. Alright, let's say I just imported this, which I just imported this, and you can see this is the only new tool that is here, and you'll see it here. Now when I import something else, we're still going to be sticking on import, and I switch to something different. Yeah, it's switched. This is kind of normal. Let me turn my display properties on to double side so we can see both sides. Yeah, that is normal, but when we open this up, where did my other tool go? Okay, where's the first one? Well, it's not in here. So let's go ahead and import that one back and see how we can correct this. I'll import this one back. Now the other one's gone. Alright, we got two options actually we can do. We can drop the tool and switch to something else, then import it. Well, or we can just clone this one, and when we clone this one, then we import. This is what I would recommend anyway, and bring in this one here. Now we got both of our tools. Alright, one isn't, because when you import it, you can see that was overriding. Now I have both of my tools on import, and like I said, if you want to, you can drop it to the canvas and import something else. That's another way, but typically I just would clone. Control in, clear the canvas. Now we got all three. Okay, we're going to be going over the Z-sphere here. I'm going to click and drag this out. I'm going to go into edit mode, set my draw size down to 1. Ball's a little crooked here, the Z-sphere, so hold the shift key so it snaps directly in one axis. We open up the adaptive skin here, and we'll be going over this in just a few. Alright, I have some notes over here on the left hand side. If you can't see it, you may need to go full screen. I have these broken up into sections. This first section here, I'm going to be going over the Z-sphere in draw mode. I'm in draw mode right here. We'll be going over that. Then we're going to go over Z-sphere in move mode, which will be move mode here. Then we're going to be going over scale mode and rotate mode, and we'll be going down the list. Another thing is you'll see Z-sphere 2 here. In the newer version, this is a new and improved Z-sphere. When you start up the application and you use the Z-sphere, you're actually using Z-sphere 2. It's really good because it solves some problems from the older version. So let's go ahead and get started. You can press the preview button here. The most common way to do this, which is a lot quicker, is just press the A on the keyboard to preview this. Another thing is you can see my draw size jumped up, so we'll set that back down. Also, we have this blank area right here. We're going to need to cap this off on each end. Alright, we'll start with number 1, which way is up. You can see which way the Z-sphere comes in, and you can adjust it and move it around to how you like it. Alright, number 2, we're going to go over the x-axis. Alright, depends on what you are doing. If I was making a human body, of course I would want symmetry. As you can see, I only got a cursor on the right hand side and not one on the left hand side. As soon as I press the X on the keyboard, I got one on both sides, so I got symmetry. So we're going to go ahead and need to cap this off right here, so I'll preview that, and you can see I got these two little green dots. If I was to drag here, I would create two Z-spheres, and once they are close in the middle and they snap together, this will create one. Another thing is when I bring my cursor down, we got this long red line. The line is stopping right in the middle of the Z-sphere where I want it, so we don't want that line to show, so we'll bring this back up in the middle, and we're going to click and drag out. And when I preview this, we're still going to need to cap off the other side. So I'm going to bring this back around. Alright, and I'm going to add one on this side here. Notice one thing before I turn this all the way around. This back one is still active. You can tell by the two-tone ball is really bright, and when I hold the shift key, you can see the one facing towards me is not active. A lot of times when I add a Z-sphere here, it will add one to the back one. We want to add it to the front one, so we'll go to move mode. We need to activate this front one and just click the ball one time. Go back in draw mode, bring our cursor so it's one, green one, and drag out. Press A to preview that. Now you can see I got this cemetery, and I got one directly right up the middle here, and one on each side. This is how I want it. Okay, we're going to be going into step 3, adding Z-spheres and inserting them. So let me just do a little bit of adjustment before I get in that part. Let's scale this down, and let's move this up a little bit. Back into draw mode, since we are talking about draw mode, and depends where I want to add one. Alright, I'm going to rotate this a little bit, hold the shift key till it snaps, and you can see the two-tone ball right here. If I click and drag, I can add one here. Now we got all this dark colored links right here. This is a chain link right here. I need to, if I want to add a Z-sphere here, I need to click it once. Okay, now it broke the link. Then I'll click again and drag out. Alright, let's go ahead and move this out a little bit. Go back in draw mode, and if I want to add one right here, let's say just break the link, I can just click right here and break the link. Alright, we're going to go number 4. We're going to delete some. Okay, we're still in the draw mode. And it does matter where the cursor is at. Is it over the Z-sphere or is it over the link? So if I'm over here on the outer side and I hold the Alt key, you'll see a little minus sign pop up by your cursor. So I'll Alt click this and it deletes them. Now if I'm on the chain link here itself and Alt click it, we get these little magnets. We'll be going over that in a second. Control Z that. And you can see I got this one here that I had broke right here. If I Alt click this, I can bring that chain link back together. Alright, let's go on the next step here. Number 5, I'm going to turn off the X cemetery. Alright, and when I get this little green dot, on the older version it would always say wherever that green dot was at, that was a good place to place a Z-sphere at, because in the older version sometimes if you didn't, it would cause twisting. But since we're on Z-sphere 2, we don't have to worry about that so much. Alright, then we're going to go ahead and we're going to add some right here. We're going to go over this step right here, you know, to move them away. So once I select and I drag, this is typically what I get when I normally do it. But if I hold the control key down now it drags them away. Alright, I'll do that again. I'll click, hold the control key, and it moves them away. Alright, step 8, we're going to do the same thing, but this time we're going to select here and hold the control key. Then I'm going to hold the shift key, and it's going to move them away, but it's going to make them the same size as the first one I selected. Control Z that. See the size of this one right here, the one I'm selecting. When I click and drag out, hold the control key to drag away and hold the shift key, they'll come the same size. Let me do one a little bit bigger here so you can kind of see. So if I click here, hold the control key, it's moving away. Now I hold the shift key, it's the same size as the one I started off with. And you'll be pressing the A key a lot if you want to, because you might need to, because sometimes you might have problem areas. So it's always best to preview this and unpreview this, because sometimes when these Z-spheres are bunched up or too close, you could have problems, and you need to preview that to see if there's any problem. I don't know if you can see it in the video, but we got this little transparency thing right here. Alright, let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger. Right there. And this little transparency thing is kind of indicating, hey, you might have a problem right here. You may need to fix that. And a lot of times to fix that is to move some of these Z-spheres further away. Let me Control Z this. So you may need to move them apart a little bit. So we're going to go in the next step here. We're going to preview this, and let's go back in draw mode. We can set the geometry density up a little bit. This is like subdividing it. You can actually, let me turn my draw size up on this. You can actually sculpture on this right here. Turn the Z sub on, let's say for some eyes or something, and you can preview that. A lot of times when if you edit the mesh, you will lose all this right here. So let's unpreview this. Let's turn move right here, and we'll preview that. And usually when you add something, you can see now the sculpture is no longer there. Control Z that. Alright, the next step, we're going to go over the poly groups. If we turn on the poly frame right here, you can see we got different colors. These are the poly groups. When I preview that, we still have the same ones. Alright, somehow we got my sculpture back. That's good. Well, usually what happens when that sculpture right here, let me preview that. If you move it, normally you don't lose your sculpturing. Well, sometimes you do and sometimes you don't, so I can't tell you what. It's usually when you add something, then you lose your sculpture. So we're going to skip that point. But anyway, you can see every time I'm adding a Z-sphere, I'm getting a different color. These are the poly groups. Add the chain and click here to break the chain. We get a different poly group. Let's preview that. If I control click each one of these have their own groups. Let me select each one. Okay, we're going to go in to number 12 here, symmetry, how it makes things straight. Okay, let's preview that. Let's bring this back down to normal and turn on the X symmetry. We're going to basically do the same thing here from the start. Just going to do something a little bit different. That's going to make everything straight. So I'm going to bring my cursor over here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to click, then I'm going to hold the shift key. So I'm going to have a ball the same size, and I'm going to switch it all the way around. Make sure this one is active. I'm going to bring this in the center. I'm going to click, drag out, hold the shift key, same size, and it's going to make everything straight. If I go into move mode and I try, when I move it up, it'll go up, and if I move it down, it goes down. But with this method here, if I try moving this Z-sphere to left or right, it's just going to go straight up and down. Everything is lined straight. Even when I turn the axes this way. So without symmetry, it's liable when you turn it to the left, it might be a little bit crooked. As example, if I turn symmetry off, it could be a little bit off like that. So symmetry is great to have when you need it. Okay, we're going to go on the next step is moving the Z-sphere, and we need to go into move mode. And when I select something, I'll either select the sphere itself or the darker link here. But if I select down here and move it, you can see that the darker link is stretching out. But if I select the link itself, you can see that it's moving without being stretched out. Another thing is, when I'm moving it, nothing above will move until I press the Alt key and click on the chain. So if I press the Alt key, it'll move above it. Okay, the next step is the draw size to 1. We are in draw size 1, and if I move something, you can see the sphere here below and the one above, they stay in the same position. The problem with having large draw size, it likes to influence and likes to try dragging them with them. As you can see, the bottom one is trying to move now. We don't want that, so we want to bring the draw size down to 1. That way the bottom one stays where it's supposed to be. Alright, we got the control root here. This is the root right here. If I use the control key on it, I can move it around. You cannot delete the root. I switched over to scale mode here, and we are going to go over the scale on the Z-sphere. If I was to select this bottom one here, you can see I'm inflating and deflating it. But if I select up here in the chain, you can kind of see how that's happening. So scaling the whole chain. If I select just the sphere, we're doing just the sphere. If I was to, I'm selecting up here on the one close to the root here, if I press the Alt key, I can scale the whole thing. Okay, I switch over to the rotate here. We're going to go over the rotate. It doesn't matter if you're selecting the chain or the sphere. I'm selecting the sphere here, and you see I am rotating it around. And if I select this sphere above here, it's rotating everything below it. Now if I select on the chain itself, I'm rotating just the chain. Once again, I will select the sphere itself and we'll rotate it. Now if I come up here and select this root, it's going to act like it's trying to move it. So be aware of that. Another thing is we're going to go down here and we're going to go over to the preview option we're talking about. I'm going to press A on the keyboard. Typically this was for the Z-sphere 1. I'm in Z-sphere 2, so I really don't have to worry about this. When we get to Z-sphere 1, I'll explain a little bit more, but basically the way it was working is if you selected a Z-sphere, alright, like this one right here, notice that the lighter and darker areas of the Z-sphere, and if we have click the one above it, we got to notice the lighter and darker areas. So the darker areas to the back on that one, and the darker areas to that back on that one. So typically this would work pretty good, and we wouldn't have any problems. But a lot of problems it would cause is if this was twisted all the way around and they didn't line, and now we have the darker spot facing towards the left side, and this one's facing the other side. This was kind of a way to fix any kind of twisting, is by selecting these Z-spheres and lining them up by rotating them so they all align, all the dark on one side and all the light on the same side. Okay, going to go over Z-spheres and subtools. Alright, we have the subtool here. We're going to append a Z-sphere, and then we're going to select the Z-sphere and the subtool because we need to move it, so we need to select here, and I'll move it around here and select move, bring that to the front, scale it down just a little bit, bring that back close to the body here because I'm going to follow the contour shape of the body. Let's go ahead and go back here. And this does matter with the transparency on or off. If you can see that it's off right now, when I make my new Z-spheres, it's going to follow on the outer shell of this character here. Another thing is, since we moved it, we need to activate the Z-sphere again. So we'll go to move mode and just click it. I want to make sure my X symmetry is on, so press the X on the keyboard. Then I'll come back here to draw mode. Then I'm going to select somewhere in the stomach area, and I'm going to click. And when I do, I can scale it by dragging. But I want it the same size as the first Z-sphere, so I'll hold the shift key down. Then I'm going to come up here and click, hold the shift key, click, hold the shift key, and I'm going to move my way down the arm. So click, hold the shift key, click, hold the shift key. This time I'm going to click and just drag. Now if I want to come up here by the neck area, I need to activate that by go to move mode and select here. Back to the draw mode here, and we're going to click, and I'm just going to click and kind of scale without holding the shift key. And as you can see, now the Z-sphere is following the contour shape of the character and is conforming to it. If you didn't want it to conform to it, you would turn on the transparency. Okay, we're going to be making a magnet, and we're going to be making some sockets, and show you how to remove the sockets. Alright, this is for Z-sphere 1. Alright, you need to be in Z-sphere 1 mode, and to switch to that mode you need to select the use classical skinning here through the adaptive skin, and we'll select that, and as soon as we do, we are in Z-sphere 1. Another thing is, I want to go ahead and we'll select the draw option here. Then I'm going to alt click on the dark chain link itself, not on the outer sphere. So I alt click here, and we get this little transparency sphere here. Press the A on the keyboard, preview this, and you can see the mesh trying to magnetize towards that Z-sphere. We'll preview that, and if you move the magnet, move it down, the mesh will try to magnetize in that direction. And it also, if you have the scale on here, this will see how much it wants to influence, how much it wants to scale. If I want to remove that, I would go back in the draw mode, select this little bone right here, and I'll click that, and we'll remove that, and I'll click this one, remove that one there. Alright, we're going to go ahead and make a socket. I'll select over here, I'm in draw mode. I'm going to drag one out about right here, and then I'm going to drag out another one here, and it's going to be a little bit smaller than the original one I brought out. I'll tip it to the side here, and I will move this inwards and move this one also inwards until I start seeing a little hole. It'll have a little hole like this. It'll look a little funny. Then press A to preview this, and you can see I got polyframes on, and there's how you make a socket. And if you want to remove the socket, you would just go ahead and move these back out. I'm just going to go ahead and remove the whole thing with alt clicking it. Then we can remove the socket. Okay, I paused the video for a second, and we're going to switch back over to the classical skinning for the Z-sphere 1. And we got a few of these sliders that have to do with like the intersection and some of the curvature. I'm not going to get a whole lot of detail on this because the video is getting quite long now, but I will show you some examples. Press A on the keyboard. Let's turn on polyframes right now, and basically if you move these sliders, you can kind of see what might happen and what might not happen. So when you move a slider, you can see how some of the stuff works. Example, I'll do something here real quick. My draw size back down, and we'll drag that out and drag that down again. Hold the shift key so we have one same size, and we'll pull this up like this. Now when I preview this, this will show up a little bit better. That's why I wanted to do this example, and this is good for like making wings and stuff like that. when I make this, I'm going to make this a adaptive skin. Pretty much what you see is what you get. So once I make it a adaptive skin, we're going to lose this adaptive skin palette. Okay, so when I select here and I switch the tool, we'll end up losing this palette because we're going to switch this tool and it's no longer a Z-sphere anymore. So if I press the A key, this is my new mesh. We need to select back here, then we'll end up getting this option back. Now this is the original Z-sphere. Alright, let's go ahead and go on to the next step. Alright, we're going to go into this mannequin hand here. This is one right here. This comes with inside light box, and this is actually a bunch of Z-spheres with some inserted meshes. Press A on the keyboard. You don't actually see any Z-spheres because this it's got mesh over top of it. Press A again. So I can show it to you. What I'll do is I'll press the Alt key and click right here to delete this, and now you can kind of see that then you can see the Z-spheres in here. Let's Control Z that. What I'm going to do is for right now, let's go ahead and get me a copy of this hand here. I'm going to Control Shift click this. I'm going to get make this here a Polymesh 3D, and we'll go ahead and bring that hand back so I can kind of show you a few things here. I'm going to go ahead again and Alt click this, and this time we're going to use Insert Local Mesh, and there's this end of the finger, and if you can see, whoops, it's really small and it's not connected here. Alright, let me scale this up. I must have pushed the wrong button here, and you can see right here, this is kind of not what I wanted, and you can see it's still connected, but it's further away. So I'm going to remove that, go draw mode, and click right here on this bone and bring it back. And this time I'm going to use the insert connected mesh, not the local anymore. So we'll select this one here, come over here, and there it is, it's back. And once we move the Z-sphere, you can see how that works. I'll zoom that back so you can kind of see a little bit better. Okay, I'm back into Z-sphere 2 mode because the Use Classical is off, and that was for Z-sphere 1. So now when I'm in Z-sphere 2, we're going to go over some of these options right here. Of course, we went over to the preview to preview the mesh. The density is how much geometry it will have. When I kick it up and preview this, the geometry will get pretty dense. Let's bring this back down a little bit. And if you notice right here, from the center right here up to here, we got this edge loop. This is a loop that goes all the way around this mesh here. I got one here, and I got one right here. And if so we'll count that as two. One right here and one right here. I'm just looking at the top half. And we'll unpreview that. Then if we set this global radius up, this will increase the edge loop. Alright, now we got more. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Alright, don't get that confused with the density. Then we got the twist. Basically, select something here and you twist something and preview that, it will twist it. And we got this approximate tolerance right here. And if you this has to do with the intersection of where all the z-spheres are connecting to, like the main root right here and all the ones connecting to it. You can kind of preview that and kind of experiment how that works. The next step here is I'll be going over the 2.5D tools here, and when I'm going over these here, there's going to be a few settings that I'll be doing to make some of these work like they're supposed to. And one would be the draw size. Alright, this is the size of the cursor. And I'm just going to go over a few. The intensity right here, the Z intensity, this is like the strength, how much strength I want to apply. And we're going to go over the maybe the Z add right here. This is to add something. The Z sub would be to subtract or cut from something. And I might be going over some material. This is the M for material here. And we got the RBG. This will be for the color. Then we have this channel right here, the MRGB. That means the color and material together. And be going over a couple things, and might be going over some of the drag strokes here, some of the alpha, and the texture. But I'm not going to get into full detail about that, is because if I start talking more about this, then it's going to take a lot away from me describing about the 2.5D tools. I'll get in more in depth about these a little bit later, but I'm kind of giving you right up front. Just going to go over a quick overview. And another thing is, before I get started, is when I do my draw size, I'm using ZBrush 4R2, and if I select let's say a 2.5D tool here, and I move my draw size does not go up or down. Alright, I press the S on the keyboard for my hotkey, and this is not working. For this version to make it work, we need to select something like this star tool will work, and we'll bring this out and go into edit mode. Then we'll uncheck that, then we'll press the S on the keyboard, and our draw size will start working again. Control in that. And before I actually get started on the 2.5D tools, we got the auto hide right here. If this is checked, I'll select it and it'll probably hide the palette, but we'll open that back up. And if we want to hide these 2.5D tools, we'll have this activated right here, and there has to be a 3D tool, and it has to be in edit mode to hide the 2.5D tool. So if I select the ring here and bring this out and go into edit mode, then the 2.5D tools will be hidden. So we'll uncheck that to bring them back, as you can see there. Control in the canvas here, and we're going to start off with this one, this sphere brush right here. And some of these produce pixels and some of these don't produce pixels. Pixels, that's with O-L or something like that. I'll be holding the control key down, and you can kind of read along. This is kind of a follow along. I'm not going to be reading every word for word. I'll be skipping over a few things, and just in case you want to fall back and kind of see where I was talking about. This is a sphere brush, and it's perfect for painting hempen spheres, so the edges are always round. Look at the little icon right here. Okay, you can see it's always kind of round, and if I was to draw out and drag across, it's kind of lumpy and round, and it makes a little lump here. And it always kind of depends how fast you move your cursor. If you go kind of fast, or then you slow down, everything kind of depends a little bit. So if I want to make like a kind of a larger sphere, I'll just click here and rotate my cursor around in a circle. Alright, then we get this right here. Let's do a little bit bigger one so we can make sure we see everything in the video. and we'll bring it out like this, and I'll make this sphere right here. It's got some nice rounded edges, and most of these tools they'll have a modifier to it, not all of them will, and we got this one that's got the soft edges. If I switch the color right here, I'll let you read this, or I'll read it to you. This is going to blend the tools at the edges. Alright, so if I got a different color, watch the edge when it reaches the other one, and you can see right here where the two colors meet how they are blending. Now if I check this so it's, you can see it's active here, then I'll do the other side. We'll do a little comparison, and you can see this one here has got a lot sharper edge than the one on the right hand side. We're going to clear the canvas here, and we're going to go over to the alpha brush right here. Hold the control key down. This one's used with alpha images for its shape. It's always drawn parallel to the background. It has one level of depth. Okay, so if we was to select an alpha for the shape, let's say the star, this now is our shape right here that we can draw with. I'm going to go ahead and tone down that draw size, and it's got one level of depth. That means if I draw here, come straight across, and I come back over the top of it right here, that's one level of depth. But if I let go of the mouse button, but if I make a second click and try doing the same thing on the other side, now it's overlapping and we're getting more depth. So that depends if your stroke is consistent and not let off the mouse button. So I'm going to drag and drag around, and you can see we got one level of depth. But once I let off and drag again, we get a new level of depth. I'm going to let off the mouse button and we get another level of depth. It always draws parallel to the background. So what that means basically is, let's switch to these. I'm going to increase the intensity here so that texture will show up a lot better, and make my draw size a little bit bigger. That means when I move it to the right or left, the image is always going to be facing me. I want to paint with just the color here, so I'm going to wiggle it back and forth so it will brighten it up. As you can see, I'm painting with just color. It looks like it doesn't have any depth, but it does. I'm just painting with color. So if I turn move on and then turn on the material and color, you can see we still have depth. So the material's got some shading which will show depth. And once again, this is basically it's got the soft color modifier, and if I was to click over here, you can see it kind of blend at the edge, and if I come over here, it's really hard. Control N that. We're going to go over the simple brush. I don't know if I mentioned it before. I'll go over quite a bit of these. I don't think I will go over every one, but this will be more than sufficient here. And we'll control key down here. This applies paint to the canvas using colors and thickness to the brush shape. Okay, so what we're going to do, we can once again select this for our shape, and we can get something like that. We can also go into the draw right here, and if we tip this up a little bit right here, this is the depth. How much depth do we want? Alright, if I bring this down a little bit, I will need to click this to make it update, and there's almost no depth right there. So when I drag it out, there's a little bit. I want to make a little bit so you can see it in the video, and then we have depth. We'll do it to extremes so you can really see it in the video, and it's got quite a bit of depth. You notice this one does not have the modifier. That means below here there's no modifier. And we got the erase brush. What I need to do is I need to have something out here we can erase. So let's go ahead and select we'll need to do something that has some pixels on it. I'm holding my shift key so I can go back and forth in a straight line here, and we'll select here. This works with the alpha brush here. As you can see right here, this it'll actually cut into it too using an alpha brush, or alpha I mean. So if I select right here, you can see I got this round shape cutting into it. If I select like the star, we'll have the star trying to cut into it. I'll do one right here, pop the hole right through there, and you can use your intensity. Alright, this will kind of give it a let's go back here, a little bit of a bevel to it where it doesn't, you can see a little bit rounded here. I'm going to have to come over here so you can see a little bit better, and you can see we're starting to get that bevel edge right there. Clear the canvas here and go into the next step. We got some smudge brush. Okay, the smudge brush is another 2D tool that does not lay down pixels. So if I select this, I kind of want to show you, it does nothing because there's no pixels down there. So once again, we'll need to lay out some pixels down here, and the red color sort of, and we're going to smudge this a little bit. Let's read this here. This pushes it around on the canvas like pushing wet clay with your thumb. And use any alpha brush that you want, and you can drag up and around and it smudges it. And once again, this Z intensity is like strength. So if I was to bring this way low here, and I tried smudging up, you can see how it's not smudging way up. I increase the intensity to 100, and I'm getting a lot of smudging going on. Let's go down to the modifier, retain center here. There's a lot of text to read in here, so we'll just demonstrate this by selecting something and dragging across. See how the center there is, and we'll turn it on, and you can see how that's retaining the center. Looks a little bit different. We have the color blend. This slider enables you to blend the current main color into the existing pixels here. What this means is this is the main color over here on the left. Let's turn this to a green here. So if the color blend is 0 and we smudge it, let's turn off retain here. As you can see, there's not going to be any blending because we need to increase this. Let's go by somewhere almost 50%. Now we're starting to get a little bit of green. If we do it to 100%, we get a lot of green. Once again, I'll just tone that way down, and we just get a real light phase of green. We have the hook brush. Now this is another one that does not lay down pixels. So if I select something here, nothing happens. It has to be over here with this. Something has pixels. Alright, this thing can push outwards or inwards. You can use alpha images or anything you want right here. Most of these 2D brushes are associated with using an alpha or texture in most cases. This one's kind of cool because if you drag right here and you rotate to the right, you can see it brings it out. Let's turn the color blend off right now, and we'll do that again. I'll drag it. I'm moving it like a clockwise, like a clock to the right hand side, like this, rotating it. Now if I want to bring it inwards, I'll rotate counterclockwise. So I'll start going like this, and it brings it in. Let me turn my draw size up. This might show up a little bit better. And you can see it's starting to pull it in. Right comes out. Let's try this one here. I'll move it to the left. and it should come in a little bit. Let me Control F to fill the canvas. This might look a little bit better. So once again, I'll go counterclockwise, and you can see it going in. And if I move it clockwise, it comes out. There's a lot better example there. It sees a lot better in the video. And we also have the color blend right here. So if it's already green, so we need to switch it to a different color. We're at 50%, so when I bring it out, you can see the color kind of blending from the red and green. I need to tone it down just a little bit more, so get quite a good blend. See, it's got a little bit of red in it, not a whole lot. So once we tone it up a little bit, we'll get more red. Then we tone it way up, we're going to get a lot of red. I'm bringing this out, then moving it counterclockwise to bring it in. Control Z that. This is the resolution right here. It determines how smooth you want this. If you bring this out and it doesn't look as smooth, crank this up a little bit, and when you let go, you should have a nice smoother shape right here. Because sometimes it'll look a little bit faceted in the middle, and if you don't want that, you use that slider right there. And we got the fiber brush. That's the next one. Let's clear the canvas right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select a, let me reset some of these real quick with this R icon there. I'm going to select the sphere right here. I'm going to bring this out. I'm going to do a little bit of adjustment here, so bear with me before I get started. I will drop that, and we're going to come over here and we're going to use the fiber brush. And when we click and drag, you can see how that works. You change the color, you can see how that works. If I want to just paint on the sphere here, turn off Z, and I don't have to worry about getting over on the canvas. And this has a lot of settings to it. I probably won't go over a lot, but this is the easiest way, if you want to understand it, that I could recommend you to do, is go over here and go into the drag rect and make one stroke kind of big and bring it out and let go, and as soon as you do, come over to move mode. Then you can move these little sliders here, and you can kind of see what happens. This is what the density does. I don't have a whole lot of strands. Well, the gravity right here, I pretty much know what gravity does. You can go down with gravity, or if you go the negative, it'll bring all the strands up. Give it a little bit more density here. And I'll just skip a few of these. These you can go over. They're really simple. The thickness and all kinds of stuff. Really simple to understand. Would bore you if I had to go over every one of these. Alright, let's see what our next one is. We got the snake hook brush here. We'll switch that there. And we'll bring our cursor over here. It pulls them outwards and towards you, like little tentacles. And you can use this like in a spiral motion. As once again, if I was to select over here on the canvas, nothing happens because it needs some pixels. And we'll get this, I'll rotate it in a spiral like this, and you can get some really cool effects. You got the color blend. Pretty much we went over the color blend before. The resolution, we went over that on another one. I think it was the hook one we just went over, and determines how smooth you want it. See their color blend right here. That's 50. If we make it 100, we'll get a lot of red that comes out. This is a really cool brush, and spin it around and have all kinds of fun with it. So we'll go into the next step. Let's clear the canvas. I want to do one more thing before I move down there, so I'll grab my picker and go down here and pick a color. Control F to fill the canvas, and we'll select a different alpha, increase the draw size here, and I'll wiggle it left to right, and you can see it raised out. In most cases, if you hold the Alt key, things will work backwards. So if it pulled out here, it will reverse it and go back and bring it inwards. And again, we can switch colors, and we'll just do one here. And we're going to the next step. Clear the canvas here, and we're going to go into the bump brush here. When we use this bump brush, as you see, there's no pixels on the canvas, and when I drag this across here, you notice that there is no depth, or does not appear to be no depth. So what we're going to do is clear the canvas. Let's pick a color here. We're going to fill that right there. I'm going to bring us an object out here, so just kind of setting it up. Don't need to really pay attention to this part until I finish setting this up. Let's go to a lighter color here, and we're going to switch to the bump brush and switch over here. Now I'm going to draw a color across this right here. Turn my draw size down. Going to need a color, and when I bring it across here, I hold the shift key so it goes straight across. And you can see that the color is not full strength when it comes across here. Yeah, we went over this before, is because the color blend is set to 50, which is like 50%, and when we bring it across here again, we get the full color. Alright, now we want to change the depth on the bump, how much bump we want. We will use a Z intensity in most cases. This is kind of like the strength. We set it low, we're going to get less bumps. We'll set up a little bit higher so we can see it. We're starting to get a little bit more bumps, and we'll increase it a little bit more, and you can see the bumps starting to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Another thing we can do is we got the Z sub. If I click in here, you can see it inserts and Z subs it right there. Kind of inputs an indent in it. You can use any kind of alphas on this. If I want it outwards, I would put that on here. Let's switch back to let's turn this off here, and you can see you got the square that comes out, Z sub, and it goes in. Shows up a lot better with the alpha on here. So remember, the intensity shows a lot. So if I a lot of times what you can do is you can click this, and if you go to the move mode here, you can actually switch alphas, and you can do some kind of adjustments here in most cases. Kind of hard to see in the video, so let me scale this up a little bit. So I'll just have to manually do this, and you can see right there. Alright, let's go into the next step. Clear the canvas. And our next step was the depth brush. This one's kind of cool. You can use any kind of alpha images with this, and it says that you can position this and orient by the transform. What it means by this is, let's say I was to switch a stroke here to drag right, and you can use any kind of alpha right here, Let's select a square one here and bring this out, and you can transform this and move it around, and you can scale it, and you can rotate it. And when I rotate it, this is almost like it's doing it in 3D. We turn on the double side. Alright, now in this video here it's showing a little artifact here, so this is not normal. So let me do this again. Clear the canvas. Let's see if let me just bring one out here and bring one over the top of it, see if this will help fix it. Turn to rotate. Now I'm going to grab somewhere while I'm rotating it inside the blank area and try rotating it. That works a lot better. Let's clear the canvas, and the selected one will stay, and hopefully the one that it's not selected will remove. Here we go. And we can rotate this like if it was really 3D. This is not actually a 3D mesh, but you can rotate this in all axes. And once again, you can switch alphas and while you're going along to get different effects. To change the alpha. Let's switch one more. Let's try this arrow here, and you get something like that. This is a single layer brush right here, and when we click and drag, you can see that we got this depth right here, and when I drag it down, I am keeping the mouse button held down, and when I cross back over the line, you can see it's got one depth. That's one single layer. Control Z that. Now if I was to select here and drag across, then if I let go of my left mouse button and I come up here and drag down, now we're starting to get some depth. Now it's overlapping. Each time I click, it will overlap each time. Clear the canvas and repeat that one more time. If I was to keep the mouse button down, I can crisscross over this line many times as I want, as long as I keep it held down, and it will have one single layer, and they won't be overlapping. As you notice, when I drag on this, we have this depth. You can think of the depth as kind of thickness, and we're going to use the Z intensity for that. If I was to have it real low, you can see there's hardly any depth, and when I turn the Z intensity up, then we get a lot of depth. Notice we're getting a lot of this outline right here around the edges, which I don't like, and you can usually fix that to the focal shift, and when I adjust this focal shift, you'll be able to see the alpha update over here. So I don't want any edges that's causing this artifact or this white outline. So when I move the focal shift, the alpha changed here. So when I go ahead and drag here, I don't have this outline white edge. So this is kind of what I like. Control N that. We are going to go to the paintbrush here. This one here is kind of like the single layer brush. The strokes are very similar, and it's good for sketching and drawing, and it also, you can kind of see it like this, and it will also overlap. These work with all kinds of strokes, so you can do anything that you want. Let's tone down the draw size. And we'll just switch through a couple of these to kind of show you. These are kind of cool. go into the next step here, the directional brush. We got some modifiers here. For me to show you this, what I will need to do is I'm going to create a pointer. Let's use an arrow here. Okay, don't really have to pay attention to this part. I'm just going to set this up. Let's point this up. I want to get this all set up here in just a second, and we're going to use the MRGB grabber. I'm going to grab me a little texture right here. This is going to be my texture. This way I'm going to be able to kind of show you how this directional brush works. We're going to select the right here, and we got the forward here. As you can see, my texture, when I drag up, as you can see, the arrow is dragging up. When I drag down, the arrows are pointing down. It's following forward of the direction of my cursor. So remember, when I dragged up, it pointed up. When I dragged down, it pointed down. Let's Control Z that. Now if we did that again, if I drag up, now everything's got reversed. When I drag down, everything is backwards. And once again, we have got a bunch of other settings here. And let's see what this one does. Might need to select a little bit of different texture here to kind of see how this works. This is kind of what they call the roll speed here. Determines the rate which the texture shifts while its roll brush drags across the canvas. And once again, all you got to do is set something real low and drag, and you set something real high, then you can kind of see how things work. And we got all kinds of settings here, which is really cool. Let's clear the canvas. We're going to go over the decal brush here, and when I select it, you'll notice it'll come up here in the 3D meshes. So knowing this is 2.5D, and we open this up, we'll have to click and drag first, and when we click something, nothing happens. Alright, there it goes, it's up in there now. Let's turn the Z on this time. And when we drag it out, we get something like this. I'm going to clear the canvas there. I'm going to select a different alpha here. We don't care for that one there. And let's turn on the polyframes. Let's go over a few things here. I'll hold the control key down here. And let's go over a few things. It fits the texture and alpha, and it's telling me turn on the polyframes, which is this right here. And when we do this, we can see the polyframes. These are the segments right here. If we turn off the texture, we'll be able to see this a little bit better. And we'll turn the draw size up, and you get this. Now if you hold the shift key down and drag, we get this. If we drag, hold the shift key, and keep on dragging, let go of the shift key, then hold the shift key, then let off the shift key, and just keep on dragging, we get this. Alright, we get new different segments every time we let on and off the shift key. We got the modifier down here. This is the length of the segment. Alright, this slider determines the shortness allowed from between the segments. So if we turn it way down and drag, you can kind of see that. If we set this way up, the segments are the edge lines right here that's going up and down. Let's bring that back down to, let's say, here. Then we'll go into the next one right here, the directional tolerance. This determines the amount by which the direction of the path can change before a new segment is defined. If I was to leave that at 0, and we do this, do a little curvature to it, then we set this way up, and you can see that it's we're not getting enough segments to get that curvature to it. So we turn that back down, and we can get something like this. We got the center offset at 0. When I drag across, my cursor is directly in the middle of the decal brush. If I offset that, let's way up here, and when I drag, my cursor is above it. Then when I go to the negative, my cursor will be below it. I like it pretty much in the center. This is the subdivision level. So we scoot this way up. This right here, the slider determines the smoothness of the shape along the decal's path. This will result in a smoother edge. The edge is the outside. And you can kind of see how the smoothness of the edge we're going to get. And we got the tile texture. We will need to turn some texture on. And let's bring a couple of these settings back here like they were kind of supposed to. Alright, this button's pressed, the texture and alpha combination are titled along the decal's path without resizing. Alright. This is the sharp turn. Okay, when I turn it, you can see how we're getting kind of a chunky, not so round shape. This will also determine on the subdivision level, and we get something like that. And we got the texture repeat. Let me turn up the draw size a little bit. Let me do that again. Then it repeats the texture. So we'll increase that a little bit more, and we get this, which is kind of cool. This brush here is actually I've used this for 2D hairbrush, and it works really good. Just bringing the texture, it's got hair on it, and works super. And the alpha bump, we won't go over that right now. And let's go ahead and turn this repeat off. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the shift key and drag out like this. And we can also make this a Polymesh 3D. And we select it, we got our new tool there. Control N, and there's our little polygon right there. Look very similar to the one I've been making, but it needs a little bit of subdivision level. Alright, we will be going over the next option, and that will be the clone here. Let me go ahead and remove that, and I will select, I want to select the, here's Spiral 3D right here. Let me do a ring right here, and we're going to go over to the cloner. We got some options here. Basically it's trying to tell me to pick a starting point and hold down the control key. So I'll come over here. I want to start right on this little middle right here. I am going to hold the control key and I'm going to click in this area, and that's it. Then I come over here and drag around. You can even see that I get the depth. As you can see, when it tried moving way out to the side, it was picking up part of this one here. So if let's say I selected in the middle here and hold the control key and click, and we can still pick that up. And clone from visible layers, we won't go into all this stuff right here. So we're going to go into the next step. We got the mRGBZ grabber. Well, we'll need a tool out here, and we will select the mRGBZ grabber. We got some options right here. Alright, this will grab like the texture and alpha and some kind of depth. So when I select this and I click and drag, keep an eye over on the alpha and texture on the very left, and you can see we got some depth and we got some shading here too. If we turn this off and try it again, you can see how this is working. We did not grab any shading this time. What this auto crop does is, let's say I drag way out, we're going to leave that on, and look at the texture here. Now it cropped just in the area of the 3D mesh. It didn't grab the whole mesh. I mean the canvas, I'm sorry. But if I turn this off and drag out, it's going to grab the canvas way on the outside and the 3D mesh, so it grabbed the whole thing. So I kind of like this off because I want just the mesh. It doesn't matter how far I drag out, I can drag the whole thing, and I'm getting just the mesh. This one here grabs both the shading and the RGBs, okay, both of them at the same time. And when I select this, we'll have them both exactly in the texture, left to right. Now when you select some of these options right here, and for some reason that you don't see any shading or something, it's not working as you expected, sometimes it depends what mode you are in up here, so be careful. Before I go on to the next step, which will be some of these brushes here, like the blur, sharpen. I'm going to fly through these and not getting a whole lot of detail. These are more for editing the image itself. I just wanted to go over just a few things before we go on to this section. When you select one of these, most of these 2D tools here, you'll notice if I move the Z intensity, the RGB is locked with it, and they both move at the same time. Or vice versa, if I move the RGB, the Z intensity moves. And when I make a stroke, we can go in the move mode, and we can move this, and we can rotate it or whatever we want. Let me Control Z that. Now if I make two strokes, let's say, let me go ahead and bring a good alpha out here. If I make two strokes, like one here and one over here, this is the new stroke where I let off the mouse, and this is only the item that's going to be able to, where I'm going to be able to move it. As you can see, it'll try following over the top because it's trying to get over the depth there. And do all kinds of funky stuff there. Control Z that. And you know, same way like this eraser brush here. if I move one of these right here, the other one moves. Let me do one more example for the erase one right here. Let me adjust the alpha here so it's a little bit sharper. And I'll click right here. This shows up a little bit better than the last demonstration I did. And this has to do with the intensity. And if I drag in here a little bit, I get this little bit bevel, but if I crank it up a lot, it cuts it really sharp. So it depends if I want it sharp or I want a little bit of a kind of a bevel cut to it. It's very sensitive, so too much will go too quick on it, so I want to tone it down a little bit and wiggle my cursor back and forth, and you can see I'm trying to get this little bevel look to it. Alright, let's clear the canvas and go on the next section. Going to be going over some custom filters and not going over a lot of these. We're going to start here, and I'm going to skip a bunch of these because basically these are some filters that you would use in another application, and these are kind of very similar in one way or another. We'll start with a blur one here, and you can see when I drag up and down it kind of blurs it out. In some cases the RGB or the Z intensity will affect it. According to this, the Z intensity has nothing to do with the blur. If I crank it up, I'm getting the same effect. We'll crank that down to 0. It seems like the RGB is having the effect on this, so when I crank it up, a lot of blur. Crank it way down, hardly any blur. I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but typically I would not think the RGB would have to do with anything with color and blur. But I could be wrong. That's my 2 cents. And we got the, let's say, the noise here. This time when you can see the noise. Now these filters here are very sensitive. You want to be very careful of applying too much strength to it. Example, this time if I crank down the RGB, you can see what happens. If I crank it all the way up, I am getting the same effect. Let's crank that back down to 0 and show you one more time. It seems this time it looks like the intensity here, the Z intensity, is going to affect it. So if I tone it way down, I just get a little bit, and if I crank it, I'll just crank it up a little bit more so you can kind of see in the video. Get a little bit of noise, and when I crank it all the way up, I get a lot of noise. So to make it short is, if one of these sliders not working for you, you might want to check the other one. Let's go to the let's see here. We got the sharpen brush here. We open up this modifier right here. Okay, I'm going to, this seems to affect the RGB. As you see, I drag nothing here. If I crank it up, you can see what happens there. Now the sample size right here, if I crank it way down, you can see it's starting to sharpen it in really small little chunks right here, little specks. And if I crank it way up, the more surrounding, I get these bigger chunks. That makes sense to you? Like I said, these are really designed to have very little value on it when you are doing any kind of adjusting. And another thing is, when you select something, let's say the noise right here, if you look at the icon, if you look at the upper left of it, this was basically the original, and if you look at the bottom right, this is what it's supposed to look like. This is showing the noise in it. So you can kind of see if you look at the icon to compare it. We'll look at the glow right here. You can see at the bottom right, it's really glowing. At the top left, it's the original. Let me go to another one and show a little bit better. Let's try the highlighter brush. There we go. You can see it's kind of real bright at the bottom and a little dim at the top. We'll check the intensity this way and take a look. You can see right here, this is the one that's going to be affecting it. So when I crank it up, I get something like this. I'm going to skip through the rest of these. These are pretty self-explanatory, but I will jump down to the custom one right here, and you can make your own custom filters. These are basically like the noise and the sharpen. You can do like emboss and anything else. Basically, there's no way for me to really explain these. I just mess with them and see if I can come up with something. So when I drag here, you can see nothing is happening. I move a slider till I find out to see what happens. I might have to crank both these up and come up with my own little filter. There might be a few things that I need to click. And I might need to increase the intensity. Then I start getting stuff like this. That is way too much. Then I get something like that. Maybe this is something I want. The best way I like doing it is select a square alpha and drag rect, and I'll bring this out like this and go into move mode, and I'll adjust my intensity and just click over here, and it'll update itself, and click it again, move these sliders, click it, and you can see every time I click it, it changes. So let's say this is what I want. Let's go back to draw mode here. Control Z that. And when I drag, this is the same filter I am getting. If I want to save this filter, I would just go to Save As. I already have one already in here, and we'll save this. We'll overwrite this. As you can see, my settings here, let's say this one says 23.03. I'm just gonna move everything so we can compare something here. Remember that? So I'm just gonna mess with this. So when I load my new brush, I'm gonna see if it says 23.03. We'll just switch that for real quick. Go to Lightbox, open the tools, double click that one there, open up the modifier, and 23.07, and that's the same filter I saved. And there's another one here. Looks like you got some other custom filters that you can do. So you can make your own design. I'm going to be going over the multi-markers here. This does not have to really be on by default, or you don't need to select it first. And how this works is, give you a little brief demonstration. We're going to select a object here, a ring. I'm going to bring it out here and position it. Let's say I want it in this position right here. And we can go up to this markers right here. I'll be going over this in another video tutorial. we can press the M key on the keyboard or press here to mark this. And once it's marked, I want to bring out another object. If it's in edit mode and I select another object, what's going to happen is it's going to swap the tool out, and I don't want that to happen. So we'll bring that back, uncheck the edit mode, and we'll select the cylinder. I will bring this out here. This time I'll press the M on the keyboard and it marks it. Then we'll go to the multi-markers. We will Control N to clear the canvas. Then we'll drag out. We'll go into edit mode, and I'm going to position this one here, and when I click and drag it, it'll probably disappear for a second, and I'll bring it over here a little bit and position it. Go to the modifiers here. We got an option to make this a polymesh 3D, and we got the texture size. This makes the texture per tool, one for the ring and one for the cylinder. So press make polymesh 3D, press OK. Here's our new mesh right here. As you can see, it's one object, and we have both the textures per object, one for the ring and one for the cylinder. Let's turn on the polyframe, and you can see that right there. I will be going over the mat cap, but before I get started, I will kind of explain how this was set up really quick. I have a plane here. This plane was set with a flat material. Then I applied the apple texture to it. We'll switch that back and select this red wax here. Then I have this apple here. This is the next thing that's selected. Another thing to take note is the texture that I'm going to be using. A lot of the colors are very similar. We have a dark red and it goes into a lighter red. You got to have some kind of blending of an image. You can't go with something that is way off in colors. So for this mat cap to work, we are going to need a mat cap material. We're going to use the mat cap red wax here. As you can see, all these up here are mat caps. These are baked in material. We're not using none of the standard ones down here. Another thing is, we're only going to be using two sections down here. One is going to be the modifier and one is the mat cap maker. So we'll open up the modifier for right now, and our apple is still active, and I'm going to switch over and select the mat cap. And when I do, I want you to pay attention to this material texture, which we'll be changing here in just a second. Now I'm going to be taking some samples around this apple, and when I do this, I will be doing this in different areas. I kind of like doing it like a clock. I will click and drag up. This will be 12 o'clock. I will come over to the right. This will be 3 o'clock. Come down here at the bottom, 6 o'clock, and come over to the left at 9 o'clock. Now I can kind of get in between these, let's say at 2 o'clock or something over here, and do a few more samples. There's one at about 11 o'clock. And as you can see, things are starting to change over here. Now I need to find out, I need to get a highlight. This is kind of the shiny area right here, and when I click, I want to point my cursor where I think the light is pointing at. It's not pointing away to the left, it's facing kind of a little bit towards me. And when I get it about here, I'll hold the control key and I'll drag out, and I will bring it in. Now look at the little sphere in the middle. I'm getting this little white dot in the middle, and when I let go, this will give it kind of a shine here. If there is a marker here that I want to remove, I will hold the Alt key and click it, and that will remove it. I want to get some more samples here. I'm going to kind of darken this up a little bit. I can get kind of, I don't have to get real perfect because I'm going to be doing some tweaking. Here's our new texture map. Now I'm going to come down to the matte cap maker here, and we have the settings for the glossiness. This does not really update until you let go of the mouse. So, and we got the refine here. It's best not to move this a lot. Alright, now we got a nice deep red. Now, doesn't look too much like the apple here. We got the intensity, kind of like lighting. We can lighten that up a little bit to orange. Like I said, I'm not going to get perfect. Need to knock maybe some of the color out with the saturation. And then we got the contrast and some other settings right here. Speckler, that was way off on that. And if you don't see any changes, you can select the matte cap button here. This just kind of refreshes it. You can see where the shine's at. You can kind of move this around and do a little bit of adjusting. You can see it's kind of big old shine here, and it's a little bit shinier now, a little bit bigger. It may be a little bit too bright. This is all tweaking right here. So I want to come up here. Not going to go all through all these settings, but we don't want to have any kind of cavity to this, so we'll set that to 0 and set this cavity here. This is for like crevices and stuff like that. Now I have the A channel. This is the A channel here. When we're going to be making another sphere next to this one, and when I adjust this one, everything gets affected through the A channel. Now we need to make we have a and B channel, and you can see A and B through this. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down here and select matte cap B, and when I select it, keep an eye on this texture, and we're going to do a few more samples. We're basically going to do the same thing. This is really not necessary to go this far, but if you want to, you can. And we open this up, and you can kind of see maybe I want a little highlight right here, so I'll kind of bring this out with the Control key. Very touchy here. Let me do that again. Bring it out. A little bit light on that side, okay? That looks good enough. So I kind of want to tweak this, and trying to look and see what it needs. It's got a lot of red in there, so the saturation will kind of knock the color down a little bit. And if we want to, as you can see, that some of these, both these spheres looks a little bit kind of similar, but the one on the right is a little bit lighter, and we can adjust the B right here. And that doesn't look too bad. And if you switch to something else, and switch to another tool, these will no longer work down here. If I move it here and move it here, they will not work. You need to have the matte cap on. And when I get done, I can paint the little white specks on here. As you can see, I got close, but this is good enough for this tutorial.